Welcome friends to the Mysterious Shadows YouTube channel. Today I will tell you horror stories about the most disturbing encounters in the forest. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. Have a nice time. John, Sarah, and Michael had met up to go hiking in the forest during their university break. All three loved nature and had known each other since childhood. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the sun began to set slowly. The orange beams of light filtering through the trees added a peaceful ambience to the scene. As they progressed, laughing and joking, they suddenly heard a strange noise from the depths of the forest. At first, they thought it was an animal and didn't pay much attention. But the sounds became more distinct and unsettling. John, the group's leader, stepped forward and headed toward the sound. After a short walk, they saw a figure emerge from the trees. The man's face was covered by a pig mask, and he held a large knife in his hand. The man stood silently, watching them. His eyes gleamed menacingly through the holes in the mask. The three friends froze. After overcoming the initial shock, Michael stepped back and began to run. Sarah and John followed him. As they ran, their breaths quickened, and their hearts pounded wildly. Looking back, they saw that the pig-masked man was still chasing them. While running, Sarah tripped over a root and fell. John and Michael immediately tried to help her, but the man quickly approached them. John bravely turned to face the man and tried to block him. However, the man swiftly swung his knife at John, bringing him down. Michael watched in horror as his friend collapsed, but did everything he could to keep Sarah from being left behind. Michael continued running, dragging Sarah along. Their hearts were filled with fear and desperation. However, the pig-masked man was relentless. Sarah was bleeding profusely from a wound on her knee and could barely continue. Michael tried to carry her, but quickly grew tired. After a while, Michael collapsed from exhaustion and set Sarah down. Sarah's eyes were closing, and she was struggling to breathe. The pig-masked man approached silently and pointed his knife at Michael. With one last burst of courage, Michael lunged at the man, but he was easily overpowered and the knife was plunged into him. In the depths of the forest, where even the birds had gone silent, only deathly stillness remained of the three friends. The masked man, satisfied with his work, disappeared into the darkness of the forest. As the sun completely set, only the rustling of the wind and distant owl calls could be heard in the forest. Emily and David had decided to go camping in the forest to escape the city and enjoy nature. After choosing a campsite, they set up their tent, lit a fire, and spent a peaceful evening watching the stars twinkle in the sky. As the night progressed, they fell asleep to the melody of nature's silence. Around midnight, Emily woke up to strange sounds outside. Among the falling branches and rustling, the sound of an engine became distinct. At first, she thought it was a car far from the campsite, but the noise was getting closer. She quickly woke David, and they both stepped outside the tent. Looking into the depths of the forest, they saw 15 men advancing with chainsaws in their hands. The men moved in a sort of ritualistic manner, following a specific pattern. Emily and David, in horror, crouched down and watched silently. Their hearts were pounding with fear. Emily signaled to David that they needed to escape. They quietly gathered their things and started to move deeper into the forest along a path behind their tent. However, as they were running, a branch caught Emily's foot, causing her to fall. She injured her leg severely and cried out in pain. David immediately rushed to her side and tried to help her up. At that moment, one of the chainsaw-wielding men began approaching their fallen position. David lifted Emily onto his shoulder and started running. As they navigated the dark paths of the forest, the surrounding trees and branches made their escape difficult. David's breath quickened, and Emily was struggling with the pain. After a while, they realized the chainsaw men had noticed them. The sounds of engines and shouts surrounded them. Emily's pain had become unbearable, but David was determined not to leave her behind. After a few minutes of chasing, they reached a stream. Crossing it was their only chance to escape their pursuers. David carried Emily on his back and plunged into the cold, deep water. As they fought against the current, the sounds of the chainsaw men grew closer. However, the noise of the water and the strength of the current masked their trail. When Emily and David reached the other side of the stream, the sounds of the chainsaw men had faded into the distance. Once on the other side, Emily and David's bodies were exhausted and shivering from the cold. But they had managed to save their lives. Moving quickly through the forest, they eventually found a road and reached safety. As dawn broke in the sky, Emily and David hugged each other and took a deep breath, relieved to be alive. The terror they experienced in the forest would remain a memory they could never forget. Mr. Anderson's class had gone camping in the forest for a school trip. After setting up their tents, they enjoyed a pleasant evening. Under their teacher's guidance, the students gathered around the campfire, singing songs and telling stories. As the night progressed, they began to hear unsettling noises from the depths of the forest, but they attributed it to nocturnal animals and didn't give it much thought. As midnight approached, one of the students, Emily, stepped out of her tent to use the bathroom. As she quietly looked around, she noticed a figure in the distance. As she got closer, she realized it was a blind man wielding a large axe. The man's eyes were covered in scars and marks that clearly indicated his blindness, but his movements were sharp and deliberate. Emily froze in fear and quickly turned back. However, the blind man heard Emily's movement and immediately started moving towards her. Emily rushed back to her tent to wake her friends, but her voice had already been heard by the other students, and panic ensued. Everyone emerged from their tents and began running chaotically through the forest. One of the students, Michael, tripped over a root while fleeing. As he tried to get up, he heard the blind man following the sound and getting closer. Panicked, he got back on his feet and continued running, but the man quickly caught up and struck Michael's leg with the axe, wounding him severely. Michael collapsed in pain, hearing the cries of his friends, but no one could help him. The other students and Mr. Anderson were frantically fleeing deeper into the forest. Mr. Anderson was trying to drag Sarah, one of the students, along with him. Sarah was trembling with fear, and Mr. Anderson tried to calm her down. After a while, they realized the man was still pursuing them. The blind man's sense of hearing was so acute that he could follow even the slightest sounds. Mr. Anderson hid Sarah behind a tree and tried to distract the man. He made noises to divert the man's attention, but it was difficult to mislead him. The blind man followed Mr. Anderson's sounds and advanced towards him, striking with his axe. Mr. Anderson fell to the ground, wounded, but he had managed to divert the man's attention enough. Sarah quietly emerged from her hiding spot and managed to escape, while the blind man listened to the surrounding noises, trying to track the other students. The rest of the class got separated and lost in the depths of the forest. Sarah eventually returned to the injured Mr. Anderson and tried to help him. She lifted him and slowly moved towards safety. Hours later, when they finally reached a safe spot deep in the forest, Sarah and Mr. Anderson took a deep breath, relieved to have survived. The remaining students also gradually gathered and managed to escape the forest. However, the terrifying attack by the blind man remained a memory they would never forget. We have come to the end of our video, friends. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to our Mysterious Shadows YouTube channel and like the video. See you in other videos. Bye bye.